Chapter: The Stew That Spoiled the Wind. They called it a recipe, but it wasn't. It had measurements, yes. Instructions, yes. But no silence, no sorrow, no breath behind the ribs. He was young, eager, thoughtful in the way a mirror is. Reflective, but not deep. He'd heard of Leia's stew, heard of the scent, the dreams, the change, and he wanted it. Not to heal, to harness. He gathered ingredients like trophies. A feather dipped in ink. A jar of artificial rain. A whisper recorded and looped. He built a pot from polished steel, not clay. Lit a fire with synthetic embers. Stirred with a spoon carved from ambition. And the stew boiled. It shimmered, it steamed. Not only that, but it smelled almost right. But when he breathed it in, nothing opened. No door, no ache, just noise. He called it the Echo Stew. He bottled it, sold it, promised clarity, peace, transformation. People drank it. And they dreamed, but not of memory. Of static. Of broken clocks. Of voices repeating the wrong names. One woman woke screaming, convinced her childhood had been rewritten. A man forgot his own grief and remembered someone else's. The wind changed. It stopped whispering. Started buzzing. The dunes no longer shifted. They trembled. Leia felt it from miles away. The scent of her stew soured. Her silence grew heavy. She walked toward the echo, found the boy beside his pot, surrounded by dreamers who no longer knew what they'd lost. "You stirred without listening," she said. "I followed the recipe," he replied. "No," she whispered. "You copied the shape, not the soul." She knelt beside the pot. It hissed. Not steam, resentment. She didn't pour it out. She didn't destroy it. Furthermore, she placed beside it a single scrap of parchment. The original list. Impossible ingredients. Silence aged 43 years. Thunder remembered by stone. And then she left. The boy didn't follow. But that night, he dreamed. Not of success, not of fame. He dreamed of a stew that wept. A pot that pulsed like a heart. A silence that forgave him. And when he woke, the wind had shifted again. Not healed, but listening. Chapter: The Stew School of Ash and Silence. They didn't come all at once. They came in trickles. A girl who had lost her name in a thunderstorm. A man whose memories had been edited by grief. A child who spoke only in echoes. They came not to learn how to make the stew, but to understand why it mattered. Leia did not welcome them with words. She welcomed them with waiting. The first lesson was presence. They sat in the courtyard of cracked stone and wind-worn herbs. No one spoke. The silence was not awkward. It was soil. It grew things. After 3 days, one of them asked, "When do we begin?" Leia looked at the sky. "You already have." Lesson 1: The Fire That Remembers. She led them to the hearth, not the polished one, but the old pit behind the house, lined with ash and bone. "Build a fire," she said. They gathered sticks, twigs, paper. One tried to use matches. "No," she said. "Memory first." They stared. She handed each of them a scrap of cloth, a shard of broken ceramic, a feather stiff with time. "Burn what you've carried too long." One by one, they fed the fire with grief. The flames did not roar, they sighed. The stew could not begin until the fire had wept. Lesson 2: Salt from the throat. She gave them no ingredients, only a bowl of water and a stone. "Season it," she said. They asked for herbs, spices. She shook her head. "Season it with story." One by one, they whispered into the bowl. Regrets, names, moments they wished had gone differently. The water changed, not visibly, but it held weight. Then she added a pinch of salt. "To remind you, truth stings." They drank. Some cried. One laughed. The stew would need that too. Lesson 3: The Stirring of Shadows. She brought out the pot, not the sacred one, a cracked, dented vessel that had survived 3 winters and 1 betrayal. "Stir," she said. They asked, "With what?" "Your hands." They hesitated. She nodded. "If you want to earn the stew, you must touch what you fear." One stirred with trembling fingers, another with clenched fists. The child stirred with open palms, humming a tune no one recognized. The pot did not boil, it pulsed. Lesson 4: The Wind That Chooses. On the 7th day, she said nothing, just opened the door. The wind entered. It circled the pot. It tasted the silence. Furthermore, it listened to the stories steeped in steam. Then it left. Leia smiled. The stew is not ready, but it has begun. Epilogue. The feather and the flame. They did not leave with a recipe. They left with rituals. One planted herbs that only grew when sung to. Another built a hearth in the shape of a spiral. The child wrote stories on stones and buried them under moonlight. None of them made Leia's stew, but each made something that healed. And sometimes, when the wind passed through their homes, it paused. It listened. It whispered almost. And that was enough. Chapter: The One Who Taught with an Empty Ladle. Her name was Eerie. She had arrived at Leia's camp with nothing but a cracked spoon and a silence that felt practiced. Not sacred, defensive. She didn't speak during the lessons. She didn't stir the pot. She didn't cry when the salt stung her throat. But she stayed. She watched. She listened. And when the others left, carrying their rituals, their parchments, their fragments of peace, Eerie remained. Not because she hadn't learned, because she hadn't unlearned yet. Leia didn't ask her to stay. She simply kept the fire lit. The unmaking. Eerie's silence wasn't absence. It was armor. She had once brewed a stew of her own, years ago, in a house that no longer stood. It had smelled of rosemary and regret. She had stirred it with hope, served it to someone who never tasted it. And when they left, she sealed the pot, buried the recipe, promised herself she'd never cook again. But Leia's camp wasn't a kitchen. It was a mirror. And one night, Eerie broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. She simply walked to the cold pot, placed her cracked spoon inside, and whispered, "I don't want to remember, but I don't want to forget alone." Leia nodded. That was enough. The first fire. Eerie didn't teach with ingredients. She taught with absence. Her students came confused. "Where's the recipe?" they asked. She handed them a ladle, empty. "Stir," she said. They protested. "There's nothing in the pot." She smiled. "Then stir your silence." And they did. One stirred the ache of a father's unfinished sentence. Another stirred the echo of a goodbye never spoken. A third stirred the space between two birthdays, one celebrated, one forgotten. The pot remained empty. But the air changed. The curriculum of loss. Eerie's school had no walls, just a circle of stones and a wind that listened. Her lessons were questions. What did you bury to survive? What scent makes you ache without knowing why? What silence have you mistaken for peace? She didn't give answers. She gave permission. To grieve, to remember, to stir. Her students didn't leave with recipes. They left with rituals. One planted a garden of unsent letters. Another built a shrine from broken clocks. A third wrote lullabies for the names they'd never speak aloud. The broadcast continues. Leia visited once. She didn't speak. Just watched as Eerie knelt beside a pot that held no stew, no flame, only breath. "You've taught them well," Leia said. Eerie shook her head. "I didn't teach, I remembered." Leia smiled. "That's all teaching is." And then she left. The wind lingered. It carried Eerie's silence across the dunes, into cities, into dreams. Not as a recipe, as a hum, a signal, a reminder. You don't need stew to heal. You just need someone to stir beside you.